Have you ever wondered how far a parent would go just to give their child a better life? This isn't just another story about struggle. It's about one man's blistered feet, a silent walk across 10 miles, and a moment he never expected. A moment when the very person who held his future in their hands was quietly watching every step he took. Stay with this story until the very end, because the way it all comes together will leave you breathless. If the story touched your heart, show your love, like, share, and comment your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Ethan Miller woke up before the sun. The one-bedroom apartment he shared with his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, was colder than usual. The heater had stopped working last week, but fixing it was the last thing on his list. He had more pressing worries. Today was his job interview. For the past 2 years, Ethan had worked odd jobs, stacking shelves at grocery stores, cleaning parking lots at night, anything to make ends meet. But the steady paycheck he needed to provide security for Lily had slipped further and further away. Bills piled up like an avalanche he couldn't escape from. The interview at a manufacturing company downtown felt like his last chance. But there was one problem. His old truck had broken down months ago. Public transport didn't run early enough to get him there on time. He looked at the clock, then at Lily, still asleep on the worn couch, her tiny hands clutching the only stuffed toy she had. He had to go. Ethan put on his only pair of formal pants, slightly faded at the knees, and a shirt that had been ironed days before in preparation. He pulled on worn shoes that had holes at the soles. Then he began the walk. The company was 10 miles away. Each step echoed with the sound of his determination. The pavement was rough, the morning air biting. Ethan thought about Lily the entire way, her smile, her hunger for bedtime stories, her wish for things other kids took for granted. A new backpack, shoes without holes, ice cream on weekends. Halfway there, his feet began to throb. A car slowed down beside him. The driver glanced, then sped away. He didn't wave for help. Pride wouldn't let him. This was his battle. What Ethan didn't know was that a black sedan had been following from a distance. Inside sat Jonathan Hayes, the CEO of the very company Ethan was heading toward. Jonathan had been leaving his mansion early that morning when he noticed a man in a shirt and tie walking steadily down the long stretch of road. Something about the man's determined pace caught his attention. Jonathan was a man of numbers and boardrooms, but he had grown up poor himself. He knew the look of desperation mixed with hope. He instructed his driver to slow down, watching the man for several miles. The driver muttered, "Sir, maybe he's just exercising." Jonathan shook his head. "No. This man is walking with a purpose." By the time Ethan arrived at the building, sweat dripping down his back, shoes nearly falling apart, Jonathan had already decided to keep watching. Inside the office, Ethan sat nervously in the waiting room, stomach rumbling from skipping breakfast. When his name was called, he entered the interview room with a tired but determined smile. Across the table sat a panel of managers. One of them, however, was a last-minute addition, Jonathan Hayes himself. He wanted to see the man up close. Ethan didn't recognize him. The questions came quickly. "Tell us about your previous experience. Why do you want to work here? What makes you think you're qualified for this role?" Ethan answered honestly, without polish. He spoke about his years of hard work, his willingness to learn, his determination to provide for his daughter. His voice cracked once when he mentioned Lily, but he didn't apologize. What impressed Jonathan wasn't Ethan's answers. It was the blistered shoes, the sweat stains on his shirt, the quiet dignity in his eyes. The interview ended, and Ethan walked out with no clear idea of whether he had succeeded. But deep inside, he felt a strange peace. He had given it his all. That evening, as Ethan cooked a simple meal of rice and beans for Lily, there was a knock at the door. Confused, he opened it and froze. Jonathan Hayes stood there, not in his suit but in casual clothes, holding a large box of groceries. Behind him, a car waited with more supplies. "Mr. Miller," Jonathan began gently. I don't usually do this, but today, I saw something I couldn't ignore. I watched you walk 10 miles to an interview at my company, and I realized something. A man willing to walk that far for his child is the kind of man I want on my team. Ethan's knees nearly buckled. Sir, you're hired, Jonathan said firmly. Not just for the position you applied for. I want you in management training. We need men like you. Determined, loyal, strong. Tears blurred Ethan's vision. Lily peeked from behind him, her big eyes curious. Jonathan bent down and smiled at her. Your dad just proved he's one of the bravest men I've ever met. For the first time in years, Ethan felt the weight on his shoulders lift. He hugged Lily tightly, whispering, We did it, baby. We finally did it. And as Jonathan walked back to his car, he glanced once more at the little family standing in the doorway. He knew he had changed their lives, but in truth, their courage had changed his. Sometimes, the smallest steps of determination are the ones that carry us the farthest. And sometimes, when we think no one is watching, someone is.